Most people would agree that eyesight is the most important of all our senses to protect from a workplace injury. The eye. The eye itself is made up of several layers of soft tissue. As we all know, the primary function of an eye is to receive images that are transmitted to the brain. Nature has provided us with some basic defenses and protection for our eyes. For example, our eyelashes and eyelids offer protection from light airborne particles, and our eyebrows can divert sweat or water away from our eyes. Tears wash foreign material from our eyes, and when we look at the bright light, our pupils contract. These natural protections work for most of us for only very minor irritations and discomfort to our eyes, but they can't protect you from the exposure to more serious eye injury hazards that you face in the workplace. The eye, with all its delicate and complex composition, is very susceptible to injury and damage. Types of eye injuries. Most of you are familiar with many common hazards that you work around every day. Common hazards can all damage your eyes, and all too often can cause irreversible and permanent eye damage. Most eye injuries will fall into 4 general groups. 1. An object causing a sudden impact to the eye. 2. An object penetrating the eye. 3. Chemical vapors or splashes. 4. Intensive light source burns. Causes of eye injury. Eye injuries also fall into 4 main categories of workplace hazards. 1. The use or misuse of tools or equipment. There are many different types of tools and equipment that can pose potential eye hazards. They can have moving parts, liquids and gases under pressure, shearing and compressing forces. Because these things can make tools and equipment potentially hazardous, machines are equipped with guards, pressure gauges, and safety devices to help protect you against these hazards. The use of many hand tools, such as hammers and saws, can cause fragmented particles to become airborne and travel at high speeds, and may cause severe damage to your eyes. Operating portable power tools, compressed air tools, and stationary equipment also can contribute to potential eye hazards. 2. The lack of good housekeeping practices. Housekeeping is an important part of working safely. Poor housekeeping can result in a variety of accidents, including eye injuries. Compressed air should never be used for cleaning unless the nozzle pressure has been reduced to 30 psi or less, equipped with a chip guard, and used with proper personal protective equipment. Poor or inadequate lighting in a work area can make hazardous conditions less obvious as a result of poor housekeeping. 3. Chemical exposure. Working with chemicals and chemical vapors. Unlike eye injuries caused by flying particles, injuries from chemical splashes can happen to both eyes at the same time and can cause instantaneous and irreparable damage. Some precautions should include: when diluting a concentrated chemical in water, always add the concentrate to water, not water to the concentrate. This will reduce the potential of chemical splash. When possible, try and substitute the hazardous chemical with a less hazardous one, or try using the diluted chemical at a lower concentration level. Of course, always when working when chemicals are present, you must wear the appropriate personal protection equipment, and one of the most important precautions to take is to know where the nearest eye wash station is located before you begin working with or around hazardous chemicals. 4. Exposure to intense light source. Welding typically first comes to mind when discussing intense light sources. However, lasers are also widely used in industry and can also present an intense light hazard. In areas where intense light sources are found, the work area must be adequately shielded from employees in the immediate vicinity as well as from any possible passers-by. Appropriate eye protection must be worn by anyone operating high-intensity light-producing equipment. For welding, a face shield must be used, and anywhere lasers are used, the properly rated safety equipment must be worn. Ask your supervisor if you are unsure which type of eye protection is appropriate. Responsibility of the employer. Your employer has the responsibility of assessing the workplace hazards that may be present when and where you perform your job. This means whenever you are exposed to a hazardous condition in your work area, your employer is required to make every effort to minimize your exposure to any potential health or injury hazards where feasible. Your employer then makes the appropriate selection of the personal protection equipment necessary to minimize your exposure to these hazards. This personal protective equipment must be provided to you at no cost, and the equipment must fit you properly while performing your job. Your employer is also required to maintain, repair, and replace damaged or worn out equipment, so inspect your equipment before wearing it, and if your equipment is worn or damaged, ask for a replacement. Training employees on the proper use of the personal protective equipment is also required of your employer. Employees must at a minimum be trained to know when this equipment is necessary to wear, what type of equipment is required, how to properly put on and take off, adjust, and wear the equipment, proper care, maintenance, its useful life, and disposal.